Hey everyone, today for another vlog. Subject for today is very straightforward. I just realized today how much anger I have in me. Throughout my whole life, really. It's kind of crazy. And even something as innocent, I just realized as the fact that I tend to pick my skin a lot, right? Like, uh, usually on my hair, for example, like scratching my hair and all that. It is, and also like biting my nails. It is actually a pretty serious symptom of like having a lot of anger in me that I've never really released or even acknowledged in my life. It's only recently, like by recently I mean like the past year or so or more, like the past 2 years, just realized how much like bottled up emotions I had. Like I knew about trauma like let's say 3 or 4 years ago, intellectually, right? I could see it, but like seeing it intellectually in yourself, no, thinking about it intellectually is one thing. Seeing it in yourself is a second thing, and feeling the full extent to it is yet a third thing. Those are three very distinct stages of like acknowledging your emotions, and like I think I'm starting to get to the third one where I can really feel like holy shit, um, really unexpressed this one. Because the thing is you can express some, such as you could say like sadness or outrage or despair, but there's a very rich like spectrum of colors of emotions you could say like, and they're obviously not distinct, right? If you get better expressing some of them, you will generally get better at expressing emotions, right? So it's not like they're completely like disjoint, uncorrelated or whatever, but in an important way, expressing one doesn't necessarily solve the other, because the blockages for these emotions might be different. um like obviously our culture is very emotionally repressed, but like there can be different factors that cause it, and just because you address one doesn't mean you address the other. And so like for example, like acknowledging sadness can be because like the reason why you might block sadness is because, let's say, it's difficult to admit that certain choices in your life were not great, but like maybe you don't like your job, maybe you don't like your relationship, and so you like block out the sadness, or like maybe you just don't like living in this society, or like you don't like living in this country, in a certain country, and you don't acknowledge it to yourself because it's painful. You're scared of the changes that it would require, and so on. But it could be like the reason for sadness, but the reason for anger might be different. It might be something like you're just afraid of standing up for yourself, and in your past it wasn't safe to do so. A lot of families are very neglectful, negligent. I'm not so much the word. They neglect the like individuality of their children, and their need to stand up for themselves. Instead, they just kind of order them around, right? So this creates a very like scared, fearful child who feels like any sense of like individuality will be punished or will be like restrained, constrained, and it's very damaging, obviously. And so those are obviously not the same thing, right? Just because you, let's say, you acknowledge why you feel sad doesn't mean that you immediately see your anger. But obviously, it's always good to just acknowledge anything, no matter how small or how much there's still to express. But yeah, holy fuck. I think I was starting to get a taste of how much anger there is in me. I think I have way more anger than sadness, or maybe I guess it comes in like layers or waves. Right? You could say that like I could see how like my anger would come before my sadness. Like so a lot of I've seen this idea thrown around that anger is kind of like the thing that comes before you realize how sad you are. Like it's a it's like the ego response to feeling like to like deep disappointment, or like heartbreak, rather. Not necessarily heartbreak in terms of relationship, but more like heartbreak in terms of like you feel like the world is really cruel and sad, right? Like, and so like your first reaction is to be really angry at that and to be outraged at that. But the deeper feeling is that you're really heartbroken, and maybe that's the case. But one step at a time, right? So right now, what I feel a lot of anger directed outwardly, and I think the healthy role of anger, like every emotion, I would say, sits fits at least, maybe sits on a spectrum where it can be healthy or it cannot be healthy. We could say that in general, we could say that virtue is always like the balance between two extremes. Right? So like anger, you could say uh, the first extreme would be complete repression, like complete repression of anger and of individuality, and you just like, you just get walked around on by other people. You don't have any boundaries. That's really toxic, obviously. The second extreme would be to get far too angry, right? To never be able to control yourself and to just like lose like just lose yourself every time something doesn't go your way. And like the healthy form of anger is more like the ability to set your boundaries, right? So like anger comes from like this place of self-preservation, and that is an important part of like being human, right? So like obviously we want to connect to other people, but like if if something does something wrong to you, you want to stand up to yourself. And that's the role of anger. It's the being able to set boundaries for yourself, standing up for yourself, standing up for injustice, not necessarily for yourself, but sometimes for other people, right? Like standing up for your values in general. And maybe it's not that something was done wrong. It's not like that harm was done to you, but harm was done to someone else, and you get angry. And of course, you can be controlled by that, but in a way that is unhealthy, obviously. But you can have an excess of anything, but I think I think the society we live in is very like damaging to individuals, and I think as a result, being able to express, being able to acknowledge at least your anger is really important, because otherwise it will just manifest into your life, right? Like, like we know that in physics, like nothing is lost; it's always created. But energy doesn't disappear; it just gets transformed. Same thing with matter, and yeah, I think it's very much the same with emotions. Like your emotions don't disappear; they will just get transformed, and oftentimes it's far far worse for it to transform because now it becomes like unconscious, like underground stuff, like it boils up under the surface, and it creates can create some nasty things. And like it's not like a radically bad habit to pick my skin or to scratch my head, but I noticed that it does create some discomfort. First of all, like it's sometimes it does create pain in my body just because I scratch too much. But also like there's something really basic about how I'm not conscious of something that is actually quite important. Or like it's one of those things that really doesn't really like look important until you really look underneath what's that. Or like, until you realize like what is underneath this habit, this unconscious habit. And yeah, it's pretty crazy how much how much anger I can feel in myself. I think it's fair to say that like most days I've had as like let's say post teenager, even as a teenager, I think there was actually quite a lot of anger in like all of those days, but none of it was acknowledged or expressed. And so yeah, I guess like baby steps. So it kind of has to come the way it comes. Probably won't happen all at once, but yeah, and I've also had like several episodes of like sort of like coming across, like coming up to face with my anger, like noticing that, oh yeah, quite angry, and I just decided to like usually I just do shadow boxing. However badly I do it, I don't really care. As long as I do something productive with it, or like just punching the air, it's pretty fun actually. But I'm pretty bad at it as well. But it's far better than doing nothing. Right? And yeah, I guess something I just want to extend on is like this idea of like emotions don't disappear; they always get transformed. One way in which anger can get transformed into something really toxic is that the anger that should be directed towards the external world, like rightfully so, because the world can be really fucking unfair and disgusting, and so there are very legitimate reasons to get outraged and angry. Is that this anger directed towards the external because it cannot find a place, it gets directed towards like the self, right? Like, in other words, like you start becoming angry at yourself, and it might not even be like very explicit, but it might transform into like a sort of background sense of self-hatred. Um, and yeah, it's really crazy how that works because it's so gradual. And the thing about like perception and the mind and emotion is that because you're literally living them, or at least those are not things happening to you. It's literally part of your reality, right? They shape how you view the world. Um, because it's gradual and because of that effect, you don't notice self-hatred until you interact with people who, like, for example, don't hate themselves. That's quite a contrast to have, which is why it's good to have, which is why it's really important to interact with people who are very different from yourselves. But in many ways, the people who are like isolated and have a lot of those personal problems, they also lack the people who could help them. Right? It's kind of the part of the cycle of despair. And I just mentioned this not because I'm in a cycle of despair. I just mentioned this as a general mechanism. The fact that the people who are really, really lonely, they also don't have access to like resources that could help them. I just mentioned this not because it's my situation, but just uh, because I just want to explain something general. And like yeah, it's quite jarring, right, to see people who don't hate themselves. And I wouldn't say that I hate myself as much as I used to. When I was a teenager, like I was like 15, 16, it was so fucking apparent. Like holy fuck. Like, I think I was literally like sort of mumbling things to myself. Like I was not even thinking that. I was just kind of mumbling like things that I would just kind of nasty to myself, and it was really really toxic. It got a lot better. I'm not sure how. It got a lot better when I got like a few years older. Uh, Interestingly enough, I just recall having an experience, like having a shift, or like noticing that I had a lot less self-deprecating thoughts, a lot of less self-negative thoughts. Like I was a lot more aware of my thoughts for some reason. Like, and I've never been like super consistent on meditation, but that was definitely part of like my routine. I don't think I ever did more than like 15 minutes a day, by the way, but I think I was like somewhat consistent with the 10 minutes a day, kind of. More like by consistent, I mean like 5 times a week, or like not every day even, but yes, it's really interesting to notice the shift in me that I've had with meditation because it's so subtle. Like I don't even know when it happened. One day I just noticed that like I don't have thoughts that you know are directed towards me and that are hateful. And when I do have thoughts, I have more distance over them. Like I have the ability to distance myself out of, which is kind of weird, right? Like where does the move come from? Or, like how did I develop this? It's really weird. Meditation is really weird. It's definitely a life changer, but it's also very subtle. It doesn't change quickly, which is something that the mind absolutely hates. Right? The mind always wants things that happen fast, without any efforts, without having to do any deep change. Yeah, in a way, you don't have to like go super deep with meditation for it to have good results, right? Like, but I think it's kind of it's kind of interesting to contrast like meditation and like shadow boxing, right? Like, I think both are really important. I think people who, especially the anger releasing one, like, because it's also a good form of exercise. Um, you could imagine someone who gets lost in, like, again, healthy, virtue is the, the balance between two extremes. You could imagine someone who is like super like controlled by his anger, and he just throws himself into like boxing or whatever, and it is a good outlet for him, but like he never like develops a deeper relationship with his emotions, but he doesn't know how to like relate to them in a different way, or like doesn't understand why the anger is there. He's just like using it as like a way to just, I don't know, like punch people or something. This becomes really violent. um or you could imagine the other extreme where it's like someone who just meditates and they try to repress their emotions, and they never acknowledge just how how much fucking energy there is in them. And they try to like they treat the anger as if it's like a bad thing, rather than something that could genuinely be helpful to listen to. Yeah, right. So I think those two practices are really important to balance out. And I would say in my case, probably m- I probably tend to lean more towards the exercising, shadow boxing, using exercising to release anger, that type of thing. Because I've been so like emotionally repressed for most of my life. So like it is good to like sort of lean into one extreme if your experience has been on the other extreme, but just like temporarily, just to get used to the contrast, so you can feel like the difference. I'm not sure I would explain that analogy, but like, hope that makes sense. Right? You kind of like lean on more on one side so you can know the full spectrum better. Because the thing is like humans tend to be really bad at like subtle contrast, right? So like they kind of have to like exaggerate to understand something. Um, but then there comes a point where the exaggeration also needs to be like toned down or more subtle because like reality can be very subtle, especially inner human experience. So, like, emotions are very subtle, but they can also be not subtle. Like it's very funny. Yeah. So I'm not sure what I have to say. I don't think it's worth saying more about anger. I mean, emotions are mostly something that you deal with immediately, right? Straight on. I don't think there needs to be much theory about them, honestly. But yeah, I guess that's about everything I'd say for today. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.